Every operator who acquires a traditional business faces the same questions sooner or later. Where do I even start when it comes to technology? The processes are manual, the software is outdated, the team has never worked differently. Do you rip and replace? What do you automate first, and how do you get people to actually use it? Today's guest has made it work from multiple angles, successfully and repeatedly. Sebastian Schuon studied at CDTM, one of the most technical and entrepreneurial programs in Europe, and earned his master's in computer science from Stanford. He co-founded Stylight in 2008 and sold it to ProSiebenSat.1. He then co-founded Alasco, a financial management platform for construction and real estate, one of the most change-resistant industries in Europe. He raised over 50 million euros and got into more than 350 companies across 20 countries. After stepping back from the CEO role at Alasco, he co-founded Schub, a founder accelerator in Munich, where he's building tools that let AI agents work directly inside legacy enterprise software. On top of that, Basti is personally acquiring and transforming traditional service businesses, upgrading them with technology from the inside. Basti, welcome to Lineage. Basti, you have watched software and AI implementations succeed and fail across hundreds of companies, in construction and real estate particularly, but also over the last years as an investor and product owner in other industries as well. What is the honest answer to why most of them fail?
It's nearly every time the human. It's rarely the technology. Often software requires humans to change their processes. I mean, especially in this what we call SaaS, software as a service, which I don't know, came across 15 years ago, where the idea is, hey, we have standardized software and we can make a good business because we can use the standardized software across, 1,000 companies, which meant we have to standardize how people work. And this is where it often fell apart because people have their way of working. And if we standardize it to get the efficiencies, we need to have a change process in there. And just dumping it on someone who actually maybe didn't ask for it or who does not have benefit in this particular or immediate benefit, they're first like, no, we don't want to do it. And this has been always the real challenge in most of the things, that you had to change people. Mm-hmm. And most often people didn't do change management. Someone in the company thought, I want to have the software and it's super beneficial for me. But this person basically just put it on the other ones. And for them, they didn't have immediate benefit. And did not communicate, did not include them. And, it's humans, you want to be involved in change. And I think there's another element is that sometimes the software is also not as ideal as it's marketed. And this, again, blocks the change process because then people, for good reason, actually say the software is not doing what it should do. I can't work with it. And say 80% people could work with it, 20% is actually really justified. But these two things compound to that people reject using the software or still do it in the old ways. And then nothing is won and we don't gain the benefit.
Now, for a succession entrepreneur, when he enters a company and thinks about implementing a software, that is obviously one idea that many have. Now, with Alasco, you build a software selling into old school businesses in the construction and real estate side. And you mentioned the people part, you mentioned communication, you mentioned champion. Back then, when you were building software and selling into the business, what did you try to bring across or sell alongside the software in order for the software to be actually used by the people on the ground?
I think there's two big parts that we looked at. I mean, over the time, we learned who's going to use that software, what is the benefit for that very person. We at Alasco wanted to introduce software ourselves, right? We had a new HR software or we had expense software. So we had to go through actually talk with each stakeholder in each department and convince them before the decision is made. Because this is very human. Humans want to be heard. They don't want to be necessarily taking the decision, but they want to feel heard. So this was the huge change or huge important thing in introducing the software is that we talked with everyone before, heard their concerns, and tried to convince them why this is a good thing. We once introduced a new expense management software. We had one before. All the end users liked it. Finance didn't like it because it was not built to German accounting standards. Then eventually we got one that had German accounting standards, which just didn't have a mobile app anymore. And all the end users were pissed and there was a revolution. So it's the very same, right? It's humans. Like you're changing my thing and that there's no benefit for me. I see it's for you, but for me it's worse. Why should I do? So, and at Alasco, where we're an external provider, we have customer success. Actually, our people guide our customers along how to implement. And I think something similar we need in an internal company, a transformation manager, someone, that orchestrates that looks at usage, that comes back and says, hey, are you using this? Or why are you not using it? Who's tracking this? And there could be valid reasons why it's not. And then maybe we have to talk to the software vendor and say, hey, we need to reconfigure this because it's not working. But it's just more than just signing a DocuSign with I bought the software.
What would you say is the timeline that people should work with, and also maybe give examples of how you were managed to convince different stakeholders along the way?
Yeah, let's take the example of expense management. We're looking to bring in new expense management software, or what we did had Excel, or talk to everybody. Hey, what's important with you? What do you like? What features should we retain? What needs to work for you? What do you hate? How can we help you? And that you find at least one benefit for every stakeholder where they're looking forward to, and then basically choose the software based on this, because then you can play to this. And then I think that the timeline that's harder to predict. I mean, nothing below 2 months. There has been a good practice to have for first milestones, like, hey, you start using this software. Hey, we can run this in parallel for 2 months until you feel comfortable. Then we're planning to switch. So people know how this is going. And then I think the super important thing is to follow up with people. To say, like, hey, how is it working for you? That they don't feel alone and like, yeah, it's now there and I can't change, but they can voice their concerns. And I think it also helps to start with one process where they see this is, it's working for that, and then start to roll out others. In terms of expense management, maybe we're starting with travel expenses. And then, we go step by step, because you want to make people used to it and actually also see the value for them. And then the change is much easier.
So what you're saying is that the implementation of software starts actually before you're actually looking for a software, especially in a more traditional setting. People that don't actually want to change or don't know that they need to change. If you ask them, it would be like, hey, all good as is. At what point do you ask, and at what point does a CEO just need to say, look, this is what we need to implement?
I think it first depends on the questions. I would not ask like, do you want a new software? But I would say, hey, what's bothering you in your day-to-day job? What do you hate? What could be better? How could I help you to do your job better? And that is basically the question. The decision is then on me. But in communication, I can say, I decided this and I did it because it helps you there. Sort of this framing. And I think it helps to build in every department one champion. Someone that tries to push it. And maybe you pick one of those champions. And I see this working is they get involved closer to the decision, therefore are more into the decision, and you actually maybe ask. What I've also seen work a lot is, there's some of you might read the book Crossing the Chasm, and there's these very early adopters and there's the harder majority. And look for this early 10% adopter in every team that they pull forward, that they try it, and this will give the team trust. But also works is younger or newer employees. They just try what's there and don't basically say, oh, we did it like this for 10 years. And then to convince one of the respected persons in the team. And we had some of them as a change agent. So if Miss Klein does it, oh yeah, then sort of. So be a little bit strategic on, you don't need to convince everybody, but I think a few people where people look up to. And I think, obviously as a succession entrepreneur, if you just recently come into the company, this is harder to identify who. And most likely I would not introduce on day one new software. I would go to people, try to understand the problem, try to understand what the social structures are. Because I think if you're going to in succession a company, you want to change a lot of things. And it's really helpful to understand what the dynamics in the teams are. Whom do you need to get on board that the change can happen? When we had software projects, we wanted to change something on the project. We also had to change performance management or, sort of the culture. We wanted to drive a change, and this was for this number, and this is super important. And the software is not doing it. Yeah, but the software was only one part. It was a part how they managed. Were they ambitious? Did they actually wanted to change that number for good? Or was it like this for the last 5 years and they were like, yeah, if it's not going down, okay. And so these things play hand in hand.
Based on your experience, what have been typical, let's call them low-hanging fruits of processes or areas where new CEOs or CEOs could ultimately start easing into the software transformation or implementation process?
I think there's two areas. One, you want to look at your core value driver process. Yes, higher risk, but if you change anything here, the upside is so high. So I would, to some extent, not shy away from the big hard thing because the price is also so big. And I think then it's all on the supporting functions. This is where you also can start introducing software. Expense management, travel booking, how people can in HR software, how people can request holidays, where it's tedious before for people, but the impact of that on a bottom line is small. So I would actually still looking at my main business, and the better you do your main business, the better the company. So there's these two things. What I would do is, it totally depends on the business, but I think everything where paper is involved and where you can enable potentially remote work or more flexible working systems, this can be another huge driver towards employee retention. And I mean, some of the companies are just having a hard time finding the right people. And we've had companies where you could not log in remotely. It was just not possible. And basically giving people laptops and ensuring there's a VPN or whatever web-based mail solution can go a long way, where people appreciate this. Like they're going on parental leave, but say, hey, I could still do 5 hours if you need me, but I cannot come in the office. If you give me a laptop, I'm happy to do it. These sort of things, which is not even the software, but it's actually just IT infrastructure.
What, in your experience, has been very challenging? What were the arguments to make somebody adopt the software that you want to introduce?
There were two things, right? People didn't want it to change. And sometimes it was for real reasons. Challenge we faced, for example, in Alasco. Alasco helps you to manage finances and construction project. And we had a digital twin of a contract, basically. And then people sometimes said, yeah, we can't use it. And this was sometimes for really good reasons, because our digital twin could not represent a clause they had in their contract. And then I get it. So we're missing a functionality. I have this contract here and it doesn't fit in there. I cannot use it. So it's important to find out if it's something like this. And I get this. This is a hard blocker. All the other blockers around, I don't like to change. Maybe I'm also afraid that this is taking away something from me. There it helps to listen. And the way I try to convince people is, hey, we're doing an experiment. We're running this now for 2 months, and then we'll sit together and see how it worked out. So that it doesn't feel to people like a definite decision that's until infinity, but they have a where they can voice, and then we can alter again. I mean, worst case, we would stop it again, most likely, hopefully not. And brings me also to the what people are afraid of. Often you have arguments like data security, what happens to the data, and here my learning is that this is often the case. They say this, but it's not the root cause. They don't want this change, and they're looking for arguments. And they think this is an argument they can bring. Most cases, the data security, you as a managing director, you accept the risk and say it's a business risk. It's in fewest cases, it's really an issue. Yeah. But to dig deeper and not allow this as an argument, say, hey, this is on me, my risk as managing director.
From your point of view, or what should somebody, like, what would be the risk actually be, and why can it be mitigated, in your opinion? Especially with these new tools.
So I don't see a lot of risk. I mean, you want to handle data in a data compliant way. GDPR gives you certain ways how to handle it. In most cases, you can do a lot of things as long as it's okayly justified and you've signed the right contracts with your data processors. You can use a US software. That's not a problem. You need to sign a certain contract with them, and they're all used to it. The standard contractual clauses or a data processing agreement, and then it's all good. So there's a lot that can be done that you've done it legally. All the arguments why the data has to be on a German server, I don't really buy. If we're getting into a war-like situation, this is the least of our problems, that the server is here, and it's also interconnected, that even if the server is here in Germany, it gets updates from somewhere. If the big data providers want to take advantage of your data, they will be doing anyhow. And if you're worried that the police gets the data, I can guarantee you that if the CIA or anyone wants to have your data, your smallest problem is the server in Germany. The biggest problem is the humans in your company through social engineering. 99% of attacks work through social. So the question is really, what is the risk?
Actually, the social engineering part, now that's maybe something for also entrepreneurs, CEOs to think about, right? You implement this new tool, even with whether AI tool or more traditional software service, there are risks, there are cyber attacks, and there are obviously cases that Mittelstands companies are getting socially engineered. Can you give a few examples and also maybe best practices for a new CEO implementing software?
So I think there's two issues around basically cybersecurity. The one is you're using outdated software, and that allows for an attack vector. So here, as stupid as it sounds, but all cloud software is much, much safer than anything on-prem. If you compare to cloud, which initially feels like, yeah, but it's not under my control, but you have sometime company that has full-time staff that's just looking after this one software and making sure it really, really, really works. So I don't know of any case where a cloud provider had been subject to ransomware. So this is the one thing, because you get updates. The second thing is to teach your employees what a weird email looks like. And to give you an example, we had at one company, there was a fake email to my co-founder and say, hey, faked from my co-founder to one employee from the marketing department. Hey, I'm in a meeting. It's a super important request. We need to honor some of our team members. Could you support me then? And she's like, yeah, sure, I'll do. Yeah, please go to DM and buy gaming gift cards for 800 euros. I want to hand it out in 1 hour. And then she went and did. And then the person said, yeah, can you just rub off the numbers and send me the codes, because I want to send it in digitally. And this was when she's like, huh? Luckily we stopped it. We still had 800 euros in gaming cards. But this is all the social engineering that is happening. There have been so many companies where money has been wired because someone faked the email from the CEO to the accounting department and say, hey, please wire there. And this is important to train people around this, what's possible, because many people don't know that you can fake an email. You can fake a WhatsApp. You can fake anything. With AI, expect this to get a lot worse, that you will have people that will sound like me call you and tell you something. So I think this is actually less about software. It's more about the human element in it.
But it's also something that people, when we talk about software implementation, just don't think about as much, because, the idea of getting attacked is far away. But as you said, people are the root cause of most things. So a new CEO should not just implement the first software, but what comes along is also thinking about cybersecurity from day one. And that means training and coaching employees on what to look out for.
I think that's web-based helps you much more, because Google has much better filters that detect phishing, because they find out something and then they roll it out globally, versus you on your Exchange server that's 10 years old and no one looked in it. So harness the power of the many for all these things. It sounds counterintuitive, but if you push this all in the cloud, someone who's paid for this professionally is taking care of that.
I think that's, even though everybody's talking about AI and Claude, I think that will be the most impactful advice for entrepreneurs taking over old school or very traditional businesses where you exactly have none of these. So this is probably the biggest takeaway already.
Give you an example. A company we bought, they have remote desktops on their server in their office, let alone if this office burns down, what is happening in business continuity. People cannot work from home because they need a sysadmin, and we just transitioned it, right? We even decided we leave that infrastructure alone. We're not even migrating it. We're now buying everyone a laptop. We're going to Microsoft and getting the web Microsoft 365, where people get their Outlook, and we just literally copy over data at some point. And we can make people so much more productive. You don't know how a good IT, like a laptop people actually like to use, how much this can push versus an old computer, which is not rebooting.
You mentioned you bought a business, or you bought business, or more like legacy business. Can you elaborate a little bit more or give insights? What have you bought? And also there you are actually taking a higher risk, right, in transforming core business processes as well.
Yeah, to give you the big picture. So we thought, how could the world look like if AI is delivering on what it's supposed to be? We don't know yet the future, but we all have these hopes. And then every service business is prone to be highly automated. And we came across in the medical billing sector. And this is actually quite specialized knowledge that's actually core to all dentists, because it keeps the cash flow coming. There is, many of them do it in-house. They don't like it because you have to be trained. You want to help patients and not do billing. And so 20 years ago, they started outsourcing companies. And we found a few of these outsourcing companies and said, hey, wait a minute, we can do this with AI much better. And we wanted to get into that business. But what we'd learned is people wouldn't trust us because we are new. How do you know how to do this? We have someone that has been 8 years at McKinsey and has a PhD. I would assume that they can get into it at some point. And the other thing is, but we honestly did not know how to run we got into it,
Yeah.
but we've never done it for a year. We don't know the exceptions. And so we came to the conclusions we need to buy at least one company. If you would buy 10 of them and roll it up, it's the AI roll-up that's out there right now. But we said for us, one company alone is good because it gives us the trust, it gives us the skilled employees that know how to do it. And the interesting thing is these companies have an issue in scaling because they don't find talent to do that job, because it's a job you cannot get trained for on the market. There's no education program. It's always in-house trained. And so this is a perfect situation where the core process, there's one core process, it's always close to always the same, and it's administrative. And we can do this with AI, that people just basically confirm the results of the machine, and all the writing back, synchronizing into the IT systems is done through computers. And this will transform this business immensely. There's no more errors. And you don't know how many billing errors there happen and what the trail of those is. And so this is why we decided to buy a business here.
What did you do in the first 100 days when you stepped into the business and bought it?
The first order of business was to stabilize the business actually itself. So we bought it. The previous owner faded out because there had been a medical issue or needed to be out of the business for a certain time. And was basically to just stabilize what was going on there. Because I think so often when you're acquiring a company, there's also some chaos. I mean, there's a reason a company is being sold. And so first order of business was to stabilize. It was also to listen to the people. What is actually the problem here? Like, what should we do? And I think we stabilized on two areas, is with the employees and with our customers. Building up these relationships. Not everything was great previously, and we needed for them to stay with us. So these were the two first orders of business. We wanted to initially directly implement AI. We, at this point, but only learned how work is done currently, and it's a lot paper-based. And so we needed to build actually first tooling that people work in a digital environment before we can turn to AI. Because if the to-do list is based on paper and I'll write my name behind each to-do every morning, how should an AI be interjected and do something here? So this was really the learning. First digitize or digitalize, then we can look at any of the AI stuff. And the cool thing is, through this digitalization, we're also standardizing the processes. I mean, as we alluded to previously, that a software forces everyone to work in the same way. This is the first change process that actually helps us to also improve the operations of the company. Everyone is running on the same system. And since we're now digital, we can actually have data on what's working and what's not working, right? For the first time, we could run the company in a data-driven way. We knew, hey, how is this performing? We learned that for our customers, for example, it's important that cash flow runs. So we can now monitor when was the last payment, like how payments are flowing. And so getting proactive.
But it sounds like you had to digitize first basically all of the processes in that business. So basically starting from scratch.
Yes, but it's not that it was okay, and they had their system worked. And what we basically did is, I think that's important. We did not change the way people operate. We just put it into a digital thing. And I'm a huge proponent to, at the very last thing, look at changing the processes. Only change the processes once you really deeply understand why they are like they are in the first place and what's helpful. And I think this can also go a long way for how people adopt it. If you don't change their processes, then you acknowledge what they're doing is good and is right. We just want to change the way, right? I mean, now the to-do list is a digital one, but it works by the same logic. We're looking at the same, it comes from the same data source, the same every doing. And I would really caution in trying to change too many things at the same time, because you then don't know why certain things worked or not.
What tools did you use to start digitizing?
I think we had two layers of tools. One is we just use the basic thing that Office offers you, right? I mean, shared mailbox, maybe an Excel sheet as a to-do list. Really, really simple, right? And I think that helps a lot. The other thing is we brought in a software engineer with us and started building these tools. And here, for everyone who has not been in software, the last 6 months has been mind-blowing. Basically, we came from a position where you needed experts, 5 to 10 years training to actually write quality software. And I think such a person has, in the last 6 months, changed their output to 10x. Yes, you still need someone that has an understanding and it looks what the source code does. But everything else has completely changed. So in our case, for example, this internal software they work on, it's by now that the CEO who's not technical writes prompts what he wants to have in the internal software. Cortex builds it, like one of the AI tools that you can get for on our $20 subscription or something. Builds it, it's automatically rolled out. And just after the facts, we internally checked that it didn't create too many, something that's called AI slop. This is when the programming is not so good. This we fix afterwards. But we see the opportunity so much higher and what we can do for the business and accelerate than the risk in not perfectly written code. So that the problem is not anymore that the code is not working in terms of there's bugs and it's doing the wrong thing. This is solved. It's maybe not written in a perfectly maintainable form. So there has been a huge change. And if you think we can enable you as someone that's looking to buy a company and going in, yes, you should see that you get someone who's skilled or at least part-time or maybe as a freelancer with a few hours that can create you the setup. But anything else, any skilled user that understands what she or he wants the software to do and can describe it as a user can do it. And I think that's a tremendous change that empowers us, not only the 5% software engineers in this world or one or I don't know what, but the other 90%. And this can have an impact on your transformation because you now can do internal tooling software. You don't go to SAP and buy the SAP software. For accounting, I would still do it. But for your core process, you can build insanely cheaply a software solution that is perfectly tailored to the way you want it should be run. And you can change it internally within an hour. But you got rid of the old problem. This is the software. We cannot change it.
I was about to ask, what are kind of prompts if you know that the CEO does, or what are things that he is actively working on? Is it actually the, let's say, customer-facing part, or is it more internal processes that he's working on?
So our software is internal-facing. And there's a difference. If would I build an external facing, you can still build it in the same ways, but then you might want to have at least one software engineer on site. Now, to give you an example, a hard challenge is we have a certain amount of clinics that use a certain software. So you need to, if you want to work on that clinic, you need to be trained in that software. And then we have staff and people get ill, people are on holiday, whatever. Basically, every morning we need to look like whom do we staff on which clinic. And this has been a crazy problem because not everyone could be staffed on that clinic. Here there had been harder cases, whatnot. And this was previously done on paper. The new CEO wanted to build an Excel sheet that would have become this big and complex. It was lacking the information because the internal tool actually knows who has which skills, who knows on where's what to do and how much work is. And he prompted this in an hour. And now the software assigns every morning, gives him a suggestion how to assign people to the clinics based on who's skilled in what's the workload, what's urgent. And that made an immense difference how we run the business.
Can you maybe more as a framework would advise somebody who has never done such a process where to start and what are the steps that he or she needs to take in order to successfully even build an internal work tool?
The first thing I would do is get into a whiteboard like the one you have behind me and start drawing the process. And then get everybody in from who's taking a certain role in the process. Say, hey, did I got it right? This is what you do? Maybe sit briefly next to these people and see like, how are you doing this? I mean, ideally, you do the job once that you actually know how to do it. Because the whole challenge in this new world of AI is you need to know what to prompt. The AI can do anything for you, but if you don't know what you want it to do, you fail. So the job is really in such a product to really understand how it should work, what you should delegate. And you can think of it in the old days, if you had to write a spec to SAP that they should implement this to you. It's this document you need to create, this understanding. And then today it's just, ChatGPT or whatever, or Gemini that's doing it rather than SAP. But you need to have clarity how it should work and how it's working. What I would do there's really easy tools. There's something, NaN retool is where you can draw surfaces. And there's exploding amount right now. If just asked Gemini, this is actually what I would do. Here's what I'd like to implement is, what do you suggest me? Are there existing tools I could use? Shall I build this myself? And they will guide you all the way. And I would start doing a prototype. I'm taking, now we're taking this part and we try to fix this. You take a certain part where you're first going to gain experience with the tool, then you approach the high value thing. I think I would recommend you something like Lovable to at least try. If you want to get comfortable with, try to automate a process you have right now. And it can be as simple as I'm building an invite tool for my next garden party. Like everyone has a personal use case.
For the internal part, I like the idea of testing it yourself, because once you, I think, test it yourself, you quickly start to realize how the AI works, how the tooling works, and you start to adopting into kind of also the business context. Now, for your business that you acquired, at what point would you start, or have you started also touching the external processes? Because the idea is, to automate the billing part, is, if I understood correctly. What does that look like?
In that case, the internal process is the core process, which means like how people go into the software of the clinics, look what new patients came in, look at their documentation, and then basically derive the billing codes from that. We built the software actually for this. First, the to-do management, let alone to ensure nothing gets lost. We are on track. It allows of new ways of managing, right? We could manage every team by what is the longest wait time for a to-do to be resolved. We couldn't do this on analog. So, this is an internal process. We not have yet gone to the process where we expose the software to the clinics, where they could actually work into this. This would be a next step. But I think what's interesting for us is we're working to provide the very same service that has been provided for the last 20 years, but do it differently internally. Because I think talking about transformation or changing people, it's much harder if I tell you, we have this new thing, but you need to work in new ways. The beauty to me, and this is called outcome as a service or service as a software, or how you want to call it, is, hey, you're buying still the same thing, but we just do it internally, and I can give it you at a different price or at a different quality level. It has so many, like, people don't need to change. So for our customers, it looks like still we're doing the same, but we might do certain things through AI. Where previously a human did it, and we just have the human supervise it. And people also have a line item, right? If you're trying to sell software, you always need to find a new budget for it. The budget is there. The price point is there. And if new AI comes out, it's so much easier because you internally just adopt it. You can do the change management internally, whereas you need to change your customer. So on the customer side, we're very reluctant to change processes because the process change is hard.
Where does software, based on your experience, will have the biggest impact from when you as a CEO look at your P&L?
So I think there's two ways. Software until last year, I think had the biggest impact in terms of operational efficiency, that you can control for. You could basically control, have data, manage on data, and then get a higher operational efficiency. And yes, software helped you to be your employees a little bit more productive, 10, 20%. The huge impact of AI, at least on knowledge workers, will be AI will be replacing parts of your people budget. This is the crazy thing. There will be cases where we'll see only labor budget reduced by 50%. But this is not necessarily software that you bought from Microsoft and it was this one thing. It's custom agents that do what your business is really good at. This is why everyone is excited about AI, and also why everyone is afraid of AI. Because I think for running a company, it has a tremendous benefit. As a society, this definitely raises questions where we don't have answers as of now.
In terms of these legacy systems that we are finding in these old school businesses, can you use AI? Can you implement AI into this? Or what would be the foundation to be built in order to actually start using some of these very exciting new AI tools?
The interesting is that these new AI tools, they need to be connected to the business, basically. And if the business runs in the old SAP, I would not throw away the old SAP. I would try to open up the old SAP on top to these AI tools to automate things that haven't been possible. And really, there's multiple ways, right? If they have an API, and so an API is a standard way for machines to connect, basically. Not all of them have, unfortunately, but that's the best thing. If you don't, there's tooling. We run a project called Legacy Use, where AI basically clicks around. If you look at Cloud Cowork, they launched something last week that's doing sort of the same. You can actually have software interface like a human and click through these things. And then this is what we do in the medical billing company. Since I said we don't want to change a thing for our customers, the data has to be in their legacy clinic management system, which is maybe 30 years old. So we have to read and write back. And I think that's actually a good thing, because in this existing software, so much knowledge and business logic is encoded that you don't want to throw it away. You just want to have work smarter on it or connect it to different systems. So there's basically, if you can get something what's called an API, that's the best. If not, there's different techniques to access it, but I would try to build on top. And again, build in the way the humans, just replicate the task the humans are doing it.
As a closing question, Basti, you built and sold software, traditional software as a service products, and sold it into very like legacy type of industries. Now you're building tooling to make AI work inside legacy systems, and you're also acquiring and transforming traditional businesses with software. If you had one piece of advice for an operator at the beginning of a technology transformation and how to lead the change, what would it be?
I would get someone knowledgeable. I would look at a university, or I would look at a young founder that maybe whose business didn't work out, and hire him as a chief of staff. Someone with the energy, the open mind, and get her into the company to work on that stuff, and give them the task and see what you can do. Go out, talk to everybody, see what's their problems, and try to help them. And having this free radical that actually people understand is there to help me can go a long way. And then you can actually focus on the other stuff that the business needs to be run, right? It needs to be developed. There needs to be a strategy. But there's a resource, real human that's ready to do all that. That I think would be the biggest thing. And it helps you also to develop future leadership talent in the company that actually has seen and can come from a different angle, because you are fundamentally the CEO and people will tell what the CEO wants to hear. But you have this other person. Let it be an intern for 6 months. I mean, we call it founders associate in the startup world, who's curious, who maybe likes to found in that area and say, hey, I would like to understand how whatever manufacturing company works, that you get all this mindset. And also, I think that's good for you, someone who has been born and raised in that AI world. That, I mean, I'm 41. I have not been born and raised. Having the exchange with people, like, how do they think? Like, they just, I said, I tried this 5 times, it didn't work. And they're like, huh? Let's try it. I've never tried it. So I think that's a driver for change
to implement. I like that, because it also gives you as the CEO the flexibility to still work with the people. And if there's one takeaway for me of that conversation is, AI implementation sounds fancy and it will impact each and every business, but ultimately it boils down to the people, how you communicate with them, and that you take them along rather than scare them off.
Your old playbooks for change management still fully apply. I think the only thing is AI has a potentially higher upside. So it's one of the greatest changes you can do, but the methodology, same.
Basti, thank you so much for joining us. It was a great pleasure. And speak hopefully soon on another topic as well. Thank you so much.